Story 1. The Man Who Wasn't on the Watch List. This story is presented as an allegedly true account. Names, locations, and identifying details have been changed, and some events may have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. There was a neighborhood in northern Ohio where everyone knew everyone. At least, that's what people like to believe. The houses were close together, the streets were quiet, and almost every front porch had the same small white sign. Neighborhood Watch. We look out for each other. The neighborhood was called Maple Ridge Estates. It wasn't a wealthy place. It wasn't dangerous either. It was simply one of those suburban communities where people moved because they wanted peace. Kids rode bicycles until sunset. People walked their dogs after dinner. Neighbors borrowed lawn equipment. Every December, the residents decorated their houses for Christmas. And every Thursday night, 12 volunteers met in the community center for the neighborhood watch meeting. The person who took the watch most seriously was a man named Daniel. Daniel was 52 years old and had lived in Maple Ridge for nearly 20 years. He knew which houses were empty. He knew which families worked nights. He knew which elderly residents needed help with groceries. He even knew which houses had motion-activated porch lights. Daniel wasn't paranoid. At least, nobody thought he was. He simply believed that a neighborhood was safest when people paid attention. Every evening, he walked his dog around the neighborhood. He carried a flashlight. He kept a notebook. And whenever something seemed unusual, he wrote it down. A strange vehicle, a broken streetlight, someone walking around after midnight, a garage door left open. Most of the time, his notes were boring. 11:42 p.m., white sedan parked near mailbox. Probably resident. 12:15 a.m., porch light out at 318 Maple. 1:03 a.m., cat under Wilson's truck. Nothing dangerous. Nothing exciting. Then, one Tuesday night in October, Daniel saw a man standing across the street. The man was wearing a dark jacket, jeans, a baseball cap. He was standing beneath a streetlight. Daniel stopped walking. His dog began growling. The man didn't move. Daniel looked at his watch. 1:18 a.m. He didn't recognize him. That wasn't unusual. People visited Maple Ridge. But the man wasn't looking at a house. He wasn't looking at a car. He was looking directly at Daniel. Daniel raised his flashlight. The man turned around and walked away. Daniel watched him disappear between two houses. He wrote down the description. Male, approximately 30 to 40. Dark jacket, dark cap, unknown. The next morning, Daniel mentioned it at the neighborhood watch meeting. Nobody knew who the man was. One neighbor suggested he was probably walking home. Another said he might have been a delivery driver. Daniel didn't argue, but he kept the note. 3 nights later, he saw the same man again. Same jacket, Zama Hut. Same street, same time, 1:18 a.m. This time, the man was standing outside a house. House number 417. Daniel knew the house. It belonged to a woman named Susan. Susan was 63. She lived alone. Her husband had died several years earlier. Daniel called her the next morning. Did you notice anyone outside your house last night? Susan laughed. No. Are you sure? Yes. Did you hear anything? No. Daniel hesitated. Any reason someone might have been watching your house? Susan became quiet. Then she said, No. Daniel heard something in her voice. What? Nothing. He let go. That night, Daniel drove past Susan's house. Everything looked normal. The porch light was on. The curtains were closed. The garage was shut. He continued. At 1:18 a.m., he saw the man again. But this time, he was standing in Daniel's own front yard. Daniel slammed on the brakes. The man stood near the mailbox, looking toward Daniel's house. Daniel got out of his vehicle. Hey, the man turned. Daniel raised his flashlight. Can I help you? The man didn't answer. Do you live here? Nothing. Daniel took a few steps forward. The man slowly backed away. Then he walked behind Daniel's house. Daniel followed. But when he reached the backyard, the man was gone. There was nowhere he could have gone. No alley, no open gate, no nearby road. Daniel searched the yard. Nothing. Then he noticed something. The back door of his house was unlocked. Daniel froze. He distinctly remembered locking it. He entered the house. His wife was asleep upstairs. Nothing seemed disturbed. Nothing was missing. He checked every room, closets, bathrooms, garage, basement, nothing. But when he returned to the kitchen, he noticed something on the table. A piece of paper. His neighborhood watch notebook was lying open. He hadn't left it there. On the page where he had written the description of a strange man was a new sentence, written in black ink. "I know you watch." Daniel stared at the handwriting. It wasn't his. He woke his wife. They called the police. 2 officers arrived. They searched the house. They found no evidence of an intruder. One officer asked, "Are you sure you didn't leave the notebook here?" "Yes." "Anyone else have access to your house?" "No." The officer looked at the message. Maybe someone is playing a prank. Daniel didn't believe that. Neither did his wife. The next day, Daniel installed 2 cameras, one facing the front yard, one facing the backyard. He also replaced every lock. That night, he stayed awake. At 1:18 a.m., nothing happened. 1:30, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, nothing. He finally went to bed. At 6:45 a.m., his phone buzzed. Emotion alert. Daniel opened the camera app. The backyard camera had detected movement at 1:18 a.m. He watched the recording. At first, nothing happened. The yard was empty. Then a shadow appeared near the back fence. A man stepped into view. The same man. Daniel watched him walk toward the house. He stopped beneath the camera. He looked directly into it. Then he smiled. Daniel paused the video. His heart was pounding. He zoomed in. The man's face was partially hidden beneath his cap. But there was something else. The man was holding a piece of paper. He lifted it toward the camera. Daniel increased the brightness. The paper contained a single sentence. "Check 417. Daniel immediately called Susan. No answer. He drove to her house. The front door was locked. He knocked. Nothing. He called again. Still nothing. Daniel looked through the window. The living room was empty. He called the police. Officers arrived. They entered the house. Susan wasn't there, but her purse was on the kitchen table. Her car was in the garage. Her keys were inside. Her phone was on the counter. And on the refrigerator was a note. "I'm going to the community center." Daniel looked at the officer. The community center? They drove there. The building was locked. Nobody was inside. Then Daniel remembered something. House 417. The number wasn't Susan's house. It was the number written on the strange man's note. He checked the neighborhood map. There was no house 417. Maple Ridge had houses numbered from 300 to 416. Then the numbers jumped to 418. There was number 417. Daniel felt a chill. He went back to his notebook. The page containing the message was gone. Not ripped. Gone. As if it had never existed. That evening, the neighborhood watch meeting was canceled. Susan was still missing. Police searched the neighborhood. Nothing. Daniel couldn't sleep. At 1:18 a.m., his doorbell rang, but he checked the camera. The porch was empty. The doorbell rang again. Daniel opened the camera's microphone. "Who's there?" Silence. Then a voice came through the speaker. "Daniel." His blood turned cold. It was Susan. "Daniel, please." He opened the front door. Nobody was there. The voice came again. "I'm across the street." Daniel looked up. A woman stood beneath the streetlight. "Susan." She raised her hand. Daniel ran toward her, but halfway across the street, she disappeared. Daniel stopped. The street was empty. Then his phone buzzed. A notification from his backyard camera. Motion detected. He opened the feed. The strange man was standing inside Daniel's house. In the kitchen, Daniel watched him walk toward the camera. He leaned close and whispered, "You're looking in the wrong house." The screen went black. Daniel rushed home. The front door was still locked. He entered. The house was empty, but the kitchen table had changed. A map of Maple Ridge was spread across it. Every house was circled in red, except one, house 417. Daniel stared at the map. He knew there was number 417. Then he noticed something. The red circles weren't marking houses. They were marking people. Every resident who attended neighborhood watch meetings had been circled. Daniel's name was circled last, and beneath it was a time, 1:18 a.m. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered without thinking. A man's voice whispered, "Do you know why you never found 417? Daniel couldn't speak. The voice continued, "Because you're looking at the map." Daniel looked down. The map suddenly appeared different. There was a street behind his house. A street that didn't exist. At the end of it was a house. Number 417. The voice whispered, "Stop watching." The line went dead. Daniel stared at the map. Then his dog began barking. Not toward the front door, not toward the windows, toward the basement. Daniel slowly turned. The basement door was open. He knew he had closed it. The dog refused to move. Daniel grabbed a flashlight. He opened the basement door. The stairs descended into darkness. Halfway down, he heard something. A woman's voice. "Daniel." "Susan." He stopped. "Daniel, help me." He continued down. At the bottom of the stairs was a wooden door. He had never seen it before. It was marked for 117. Daniel's hand trembled. The voice came from behind him. "Please." He reached for the handle. Then his phone buzzed. A message appeared. "Don't open it." Daniel froze. Another message. "He wants you to." Then another. "Look behind you." Daniel slowly turned. At the top of the basement stairs stood the man. The same dark jacket, the same baseball cap, the same expression. He smiled, then removed his cap. Daniel finally saw his face and recognized him. It was Daniel. Older, much older. The man's face was his own, but his eyes were completely black. He whispered, "You should have stopped watching." Daniel stepped backward. The older version of himself smiled. "You're next." The basement lights went out. Daniel screamed. And then, nothing. The police found Daniel's house the next morning. The front door was unlocked. The cameras were destroyed. The basement door was open. Daniel was gone. There was no sign of a struggle. No blood. No footprints. No broken windows. Nothing. But one thing remained. His neighborhood watch notebook. It was sitting on the kitchen table. The last page contained a new entry, written in Daniel's handwriting. 1:18 a.m. House 417 is watching back. Susan was never found either. And according to the official neighborhood records, there has never been a house numbered 417 in Maple Ridge Estates. But former residents claim something strange happened after Daniel disappeared. At exactly 1:18 every morning, porch lights throughout the neighborhood would turn on, one by one. House 401, all the way down the street. And then, a light would appear at the end of a road that wasn't there the day before. A road leading to a single house. Number 417. Residents who looked through their blinds said they could see someone standing in the upstairs window. Sometimes it looked like Susan. Sometimes it looked like Daniel. And sometimes it looked like themselves. That's why the old neighborhood watch members eventually stopped patrolling after dark. They stopped looking through windows. They stopped checking suspicious cars. They stopped writing things down because they learned something Daniel never understood. Sometimes watching your neighborhood doesn't keep you safe. Sometimes it lets something know you're watching. And once it knows you're watching, it starts watching you back. Story 2, The House Across the Street. This story is presented as an allegedly true account. Names and identifying details have been changed, and some events may have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. When Emily moved into Cedar Hollow, the first thing she noticed was how quiet the neighborhood was. Not peaceful, quiet. There was a difference. Peaceful meant birds, dogs barking, children playing, cars passing occasionally. Cedar Hollow didn't have much of that after dark. The streets became almost completely silent. Emily had moved there with her husband, Jason, and their 8-year-old daughter, Lily. They had spent months looking for a house. They wanted somewhere safe, somewhere away from the city, somewhere Lily could play outside without them worrying. The realtor had described Cedar Hollow as a close-knit community. There was a neighborhood watch. Everyone knew everyone. People watched out for suspicious vehicles. There were cameras at several intersections, and every house had a small neighborhood watch sticker near the front door. Emily liked that, until she noticed the house across the street. It was number 214, a 2-story gray house with dark windows and an overgrown front yard. There were no decorations, no porch furniture, no flowers, no cars in the driveway. The house looked abandoned. Emily asked the realtor about it. "Is anyone living there?" The realtor hesitated. "Yes." Emily looked at him. "Really? Technically? What does that mean?" He smiled awkwardly. "The owner doesn't come around often." "Who is the owner?" "I don't know." Emily didn't think much of it until the first night. At 2:40 a.m., Lily woke her. "Mom." Emily sat up. "What happened?" Lily was standing in the bedroom doorway. She looked frightened. there's someone outside. Emily immediately got out of bed. Where? Across the street. Emily walked to the window. She carefully lifted the curtain. The house across the street was completely dark. Then she noticed something. A man was standing behind one of the upstairs windows. Emily froze. He was staring directly at their house. She couldn't see his face clearly, only his silhouette. "Mom, go back to bed." "But he's watching us." Emily closed the curtain. "It's probably the owner." She walked Lily back to her room, but when she returned to the bedroom, the man was still there, standing in exactly the same position. Emily stared. She pulled the curtain shut. That morning, she told Jason. He laughed. Maybe someone is staying there. Then why did the realtor say it was basically empty? Jason shrugged. Maybe he was wrong. Emily didn't argue. That afternoon, she went for a walk. She passed the house. The yard was badly overgrown. The windows were dirty. There was no mailbox, no visible house number. She noticed something strange near the front door. A neighborhood watch sticker. It was old, almost completely faded. Emily returned home. That evening, she joined the neighborhood watch group chat. She introduced herself. Several neighbors welcomed her. Then she asked, "Does anyone know who lives at 214? The conversation stopped. Nobody answered. Emily waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then an older man named Robert replied, "Don't worry about that house." Emily typed, "Why?" Robert didn't answer. Another neighbor wrote, "Just keep your curtains closed at night." Emily thought it was a joke. Then another message appeared. Seriously. That night, Emily closed the curtains. At 2:40 a.m., she heard 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. She sat upright. Jason was asleep beside her. The knocking came again, this time from downstairs. Emily slowly got out of bed. She walked toward the staircase. The house was dark. Another knock. She reached the front door. The doorbell didn't ring, only knocking. Emily looked through the peephole. Nobody was there. She stepped back. Then something moved across the window. A shadow. Someone was standing on the porch. Emily whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. She looked through the peephole again. Nothing. Then her phone buzzed. A message from the neighborhood watch group. "Don't open the door." Emily's heart started pounding. She typed, "Why?" Robert replied, "Because nobody should be at your door." Emily stared. Another message appeared. "Look across the street." She didn't want to, but she did. She slowly moved toward the living room window. She lifted the curtain just enough to see. The house across the street had one illuminated window, the upstairs window, the same place where she'd seen the man. And he was standing there, watching her. Emily dropped the curtain. She called Jason. He came downstairs. "What happened?" She pointed toward the window. "Someone is watching us." Jason looked. Nothing. The upstairs window was dark. He laughed nervously. "You scared yourself." "No, Emily, I saw him." Jason checked the front door. Locked. Windows locked. Everything secure. They went back upstairs. At 2:40 a.m. the following night, the power went out. The entire neighborhood went dark. Emily woke immediately. She heard Lily crying. She ran to her daughter's room. Lily was sitting on the bed. "Mom, it's okay. Someone was standing in my window." Emily froze. "What?" Lily pointed. "That man." Emily looked toward the window. The curtain was closed. She pulled it aside. Nothing. Then she saw something that made her stomach drop. A footprint on the outside of the second-story window. A muddy human footprint. Emily backed away. That was impossible. The window was upstairs. There was no roof beneath it. No balcony. Nothing someone could stand on. Jason called the police. Officers arrived. They inspected the house. One officer looked at the footprint. He didn't say anything. He simply photographed it. Then he asked, "Have you had any problems with the house across the street?" Emily nodded. "Someone keeps watching us." The officer looked toward 214. His expression changed. "Don't go over there." Emily asked, "What?" The officer hesitated. "Just don't." After the police left, Emily couldn't sleep. At 4:15 a.m., she heard something outside. A child's voice. "Mom." Emily sat up. It sounded exactly like Lily. She rushed to her daughter's room. Lily was asleep. Emily stared at her. Then the voice came again. From outside. "Mom." Emily's blood ran cold. It was Lily's voice, coming from the house across the street. Emily woke Jason. They stood together at the window. The upstairs window of house 214 was illuminated. A little girl stood behind the glass. She looked about 8 years old. She raised her hand. Emily recognized her. It was Lily, or someone who looked exactly like Lily. Jason whispered, "That's impossible." The girl smiled. Then she mouthed, "Come outside." Emily closed the curtains. They called the police again. But when officers arrived, the house across the street was dark. No girl, no lights, no movement. One officer told them to stay inside. The next morning, Emily searched property records. House 214 had been vacant for 11 years. The previous owner had died. His wife had died shortly afterward. Their daughter had disappeared. Emily stared at the record. The daughter's name was Lily. Same age, 8 years old. She looked at the date. The girl had disappeared exactly 11 years earlier. Emily felt sick. She called Robert. "How long has that house been empty?" He didn't answer immediately. Then, 11 years. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "We didn't want to scare you." "What happened to the girl?" Silence. "Robert," he finally said. "She was never found." Emily looked across the street. Who was standing in the window? Robert whispered, "Don't look." But it was already too late. The upstairs curtain moved. Someone was standing behind it. Emily dropped the phone. The figure slowly lifted one hand, then pointed directly at Emily's house. Not at Emily, at Lily's bedroom. Emily ran upstairs. Lily was gone. Her bedroom window was open. Emily screamed. Jason searched the house. Nothing. They ran outside. Neighbors began coming out. Everyone searched the street. Then Robert arrived. He looked at Emily. "Where is Lily?" "She's gone." Robert's face became pale. He looked across the street. "No." Emily grabbed him. "Where would she go?" Robert whispered. 214. Emily stared. The front door of house 214 was open. They crossed the street. The inside smelled like damp wood. Dust covered everything. The furniture was old. The staircase led upstairs. Emily called. "Lily." No answer. Jason searched the first floor. Robert stood frozen near the hallway. Emily went upstairs. There were 3 bedrooms. The first was empty. The second was empty. The third had a small bed, a child's room. The walls were covered with drawings. Emily stepped closer. Every drawing showed the same thing. A house, a little girl, and a woman standing across the street. Emily realized the woman was supposed to be her. She turned. Lily was standing in the doorway. "Mom." Emily ran to her. "Are you okay?" Lily nodded. "Who brought you here?" Lily pointed toward the closet. Emily opened it. "Nobody." Then Lily whispered, "The girl." "What girl?" "The one who lives here." Emily looked at the drawings. Lily pointed to one. She said I could stay with her. Emily hugged her tightly. "We're leaving." As they walked downstairs, Robert stopped. He was staring at an old photograph. Emily looked. The photograph showed the family who had lived there. A father, a mother, a little girl. Emily recognized the girl. She looked exactly like the figure from the upstairs window. Robert whispered, "That's her." Suddenly, the front door slammed shut. The house went dark. Lily screamed. Something moved upstairs. Footsteps. Slow. Step. 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 Jason tried the front door. Locked. Robert tried. Nothing. Emily grabbed Lily. The footsteps stopped. Then a child's voice whispered from upstairs. "Mom." Emily froze. It sounded like Lily, but Lily was standing beside her. The voice came again. "Mom." Then another voice. Emily's voice. "Come upstairs." Jason stared at her. "You didn't say that." Emily shook her head. The house creaked. A bedroom door opened upstairs. Then another. Then another. Robert whispered, "Don't answer." The lights suddenly came back. The front door unlocked. They ran outside. Police arrived minutes later. They searched the house. They found no one. But in the child's bedroom, they found something. A small notebook. Inside were dozens of names. People who had lived in the neighborhood. Some names were decades old. Some belonged to current residents. The last page contained 3 names. Robert, Emily, Lily, and beneath them was another line. Next, Jason. The police took the notebook. House 214 was boarded up. The family moved away within a month. But before leaving, Emily did one thing. She drove past the house one last time. It was late afternoon. The sun was still up. The windows were boarded. The yard was empty. Nothing moved. Then Emily saw someone standing behind the upstairs boards. A little girl. She was smiling. Emily stopped the car. The girl raised her hand, and behind her, another figure appeared. A woman, then a man, then dozens of people, all watching from inside the house. Emily drove away. Years later, she still refuses to look through uncovered windows at night. Lily is an adult now. She remembers almost nothing about the house, except one thing. She remembers the little girl, and she remembers what the girl told her before they left. "You can go home." Lily had asked, "What about you?" The little girl smiled and said, "I already have a home." Then she pointed across the street at Emily's house. That was when Emily realized the truth. House 214 wasn't trying to keep people inside. It was trying to make them look, because the moment someone looked through a window, the house could see them too. And according to Robert, that's why the old neighborhood watch members always kept their blinds closed after midnight. They weren't afraid of someone breaking into their houses. They were afraid of someone standing across the street, waiting for them to look outside. Because once you saw the people in the windows, they could see you, and eventually, they would start appearing in yours. Story 3, The Man Who Walked Every Night. This story is presented as an allegedly true account. Names, locations, and identifying details have been changed, and some events may have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. At first, nobody thought the man was dangerous. That was the problem. He looked completely ordinary. Every night, around 12:30 a.m., he walked through the neighborhood. Same direction, same pace, same dark jacket, same baseball cap. He never ran, never stopped, never spoke to anyone. He simply walked. The first person to notice him was a retired teacher named Harold. Harold lived alone at the end of Willow Creek Drive and had been part of the neighborhood watch for more than 15 years. He knew everyone, so when he saw the stranger walking past his house one night, he assumed the man was new. Harold watched him through the living room window. The man walked slowly along the sidewalk. At exactly 12:37 a.m., he stopped. He turned toward Harold's house and stared directly at the window. Harold closed the curtain. The next night, the man returned. 12:30. Same jacket, Zamahat, same pace. 12:37. He stopped, looked at Harold's window, then continued walking. Harold mentioned it during the neighborhood watch meeting. One neighbor laughed. "Maybe he's just walking home from work." Harold nodded. "Maybe." But another resident, Carla, spoke up. "I've seen him too." Harold looked at her. When, every night, a third neighbor said, "Me too." Then another. Soon, almost everyone had seen the man. Nobody knew who he was. They checked the neighborhood directory. No name matched. They checked the local property records. Nothing. They asked the police. The officer said, "As long as he's not trespassing, there's not much we can do." So the neighborhood watched him, and the man watched them. For 2 weeks, nothing else happened. Then Harold noticed something strange. The man wasn't walking randomly. He was following a route. Every night, he passed the same 12 houses, always in the same order. House 18, House 21, House 23, House 27, House 31, then Harold's, then 5 more. He wrote the route down. The next night, he followed the man from his car. The man walked at exactly the same speed. Harold stayed about half a block behind. When the man reached the end of the neighborhood, he didn't leave. Instead, he turned around and walked the route backward. Harold followed. At 1:26 a.m., the man stopped outside a house. House 31. He stood there for almost 5 minutes. Then he walked away. Harold wrote down the time. The next morning, he called the resident. "Did you notice anything strange last night?" The homeowner, a man named Brian, laughed. "No." "Anything at all?" "No." Harold hesitated. "Did your alarm go off?" Brian became quiet. "Why?" "Just asking." Brian checked his alarm system. It had recorded movement at 1:26 a.m., but there was no video, only a blank black screen. Harold felt uneasy. That evening, the neighborhood watch group decided to patrol together. 6 people, 2 vehicles. They drove around from midnight until 2 a.m. At 12:37, they saw him. The man was walking down the sidewalk. Harold stopped his car. Everyone watched. The man passed them. Nobody spoke. Then he stopped. He turned toward the car and smiled. One of the volunteers whispered, "That's creepy." The man continued walking. The group followed him. At 1:26, he stopped outside house 31 again. This time, Harold got out. "Hey." The man didn't respond. Harold approached. "Can I talk to you?" The man turned. His face was ordinary, middle-aged, short brown hair, tired eyes, nothing frightening. Harold asked, "Do you live around here?" The man smiled. "Yes." "Where?" The man pointed toward house 31. Harold looked. "But that's Brian's house." The man nodded. "I know." Harold felt uncomfortable. "What's your name?" The man stared at him, then said, "Harold." Harold froze. "How do you know my name?" The man smiled. "You watch us." Harold stepped backward. "Who is us?" The man pointed toward the houses. "The people who live here." Then he walked away. Harold watched him disappear around the corner. The neighborhood watch members returned to their cars. Nobody spoke for several minutes. Finally, Carla said, "We should call the police." They did. An officer arrived. He searched the area. No sign of the man. The next morning, Harold checked his security camera. At 1:26 a.m., the man appeared outside house 31. But something was wrong. The recording showed him standing there. Then the camera timestamp jumped. 1:26:1:34. 8 minutes were missing. Harold checked the other cameras. Every camera had the same gap. Exactly 8 minutes. He called the police. They examined the footage. The officer looked concerned. "Do you have a recording from before this?" Harold showed him. The officer watched, then asked, "Who's the man standing behind him?" Harold stared. Behind the walking man was another figure. Then another. Then another. Dozens of people walking silently behind him. Harold had never seen them in real life. The officer stopped the video. "Don't show this to anyone." "What?" The officer didn't answer. That night, Harold didn't sleep. At 12:30, he checked the window. The street was empty. 12:37, nothing. 12:45, nothing. He relaxed. Then his doorbell rang. Harold froze. He checked the camera. The man was standing on his porch. Harold didn't move. The man looked directly into the camera, then raised his hand. He was holding a photograph. Harold zoomed in. The photograph showed Harold's house, but the photograph had been taken from inside. Harold stared. The man lifted the photograph closer. On the back was written, "You missed one." Harold's stomach tightened. He checked his house. Front door locked. Windows locked. Nothing. Then he heard a sound upstairs. A floorboard creaking. Harold slowly looked toward the ceiling. Another creak. He grabbed his phone. Called 911. "Someone is inside my house." The dispatcher asked, "Where?" "Upstairs." "Stay downstairs." Harold heard footsteps. "Slow. Step. Step. Step." He whispered, "He's coming down." The dispatcher told him to leave through the back door. Harold moved toward the kitchen. Then he heard the front door open. He stopped. The man had entered. Harold could hear footsteps in the hallway. But the strange thing was, there were 2 sets. One from the front door, one from upstairs. Then 3, then 4. Harold ran out the back door. Police arrived minutes later. The house was empty. No broken windows. No damidlags. No footprints. But the security camera showed something terrifying. At 12:58 a.m., Harold walked out his back door. Behind him, 4 people followed. Harold hadn't seen them. The officer asked, "Who are those people?" Harold shook his head. "I don't know." The officer stared at the screen, then said, "Neither do I." Harold left the neighborhood that week. He moved in with his daughter, but the strange walking man continued. Residents reported seeing him every night, always at 12:30, always following the same route. Then something changed. The man began stopping in different houses. House 18, House 21, House 23, House 27, one house every night. And after he stopped, someone from that house would disappear. First, an elderly woman, then a young couple, then a teenager. No signs of forced entry, no evidence. They simply vanished. The police began investigating. They searched the neighborhood. They installed cameras. They increased patrols. But every night, the man continued walking. And every time officers tried to approach him, the footage would cut out. 8 minutes. Always 8 minutes. One officer finally decided to follow him on foot. His body camera recorded everything. At 12:30, the man appeared. At 12:37, he stopped. At 12:45, he turned. At 1:26, he reached a house. Then the camera went black. 8 minutes later, the officer was standing alone in the middle of the street. The man was gone. The officer didn't remember the missing 8 minutes, but he had one thing in his hand, a photograph. It showed his own house, taken from inside. He quit the police force shortly afterward. The neighborhood eventually emptied. Families moved away. The houses became vacant. The streets became silent. But the man continued walking. Years later, a local investigator found old surveillance footage from the neighborhood. He discovered something that made him sick. The man had been recorded walking there long before the neighborhood existed. Construction footage from 25 years earlier showed the same figure walking through the unfinished streets. Aerial footage from before the houses were built showed him walking through an empty field. Even older photographs showed him, always the same age, always wearing the same dark jacket, always walking. Then the investigator found something older, a newspaper clipping from 1964, a photograph of a missing family. 5 people. The caption said, "Family disappears after neighbors report unknown man walking outside home." The photograph contained the same man, standing in the background, watching. The investigator contacted the family of one of the missing people. An elderly woman agreed to speak. She said her father had warned her about the man. He said the man wasn't looking for houses. The investigator asked, "What was he looking for?" The woman answered, "People who were watching." The investigator asked, "Why?" She shook her head. "My father said the man was looking for witnesses." "Witnesses to what?" The woman stared at him, then whispered, "Something that happened before the neighborhood was built." The investigator asked what she meant. She refused to answer, but before leaving, she gave him one final word. "If you see him walking, don't follow, don't photograph him, and whatever you do, don't look back when he passes." The investigator asked why. She said, "Because he counts the people who turn around." That night, the investigator reviewed the footage one more time. He watched the man walk. 12:30, 12:37, 1:26. He noticed something he'd missed. Every time the man stopped, he wasn't looking at the house. He was looking at a window, and in each window, someone was watching him. The investigator counted them. House 18, 1 person. House 21, 2. House 23, 3. House 27, 1. House 31, 4. Then he reached the final house, his own house. He stared at the footage. At 1:42 a.m., the man stopped outside his home. The investigator looked at the window. There was someone standing behind the curtain. He assumed it was himself. Then he remembered. He had been sitting in the basement when the footage was recorded. He slowly zoomed in. The figure behind the curtain wasn't him. It was the walking man, standing inside his house, watching the street, watching himself. The investigator immediately shut down the computer. He packed his belongings. He left before sunrise. He never returned. But he later claimed that the strangest thing happened 3 nights afterward. At exactly 12:30 a.m., he received a notification from his old security camera. Motion detected. He opened the app. The camera showed the street outside his new apartment. The walking man was there. Same jacket, Zalmahat, same slow pace. The investigator watched him walk past, then stop. He turned toward the camera and smiled. The recording ended. The investigator deleted the camera app. But every night after that, he heard footsteps outside his apartment, always at 12:37, always 3 slow steps, then silence. He never looked through the window, because he remembered the old woman's warning. The man wasn't walking because he was searching for houses. He was searching for people who were watching. And according to the investigator, the moment you watch him long enough, he stops walking. He turns around and starts walking toward you. So if you ever notice someone walking through your neighborhood late at night, don't assume they're harmless because they look ordinary. Don't follow them. Don't film them. Don't stare through the blinds. And most importantly, if they suddenly stop beneath a streetlight and look directly toward your house, close the curtains, because maybe they're not wondering who lives there. Maybe they're counting how many people are watching. And once they know you're one of them, You might become the next house on their route. Story 4. The house that wasn't there. This story is presented as an allegedly true account. Names, locations, and identifying details have been changed, and certain events may have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. When Michael first volunteered for the Neighborhood Watch, he thought the biggest problem he'd ever deal with would be teenagers throwing bottles into the street. He was wrong. The neighborhood was called Briar Glen. It was a quiet suburban development surrounded by woods, with roughly 200 houses arranged around a series of winding streets. At the entrance stood a large wooden sign. Welcome to Briar Glen. Look out for your neighbors. Michael had lived there for 6 years. He knew the streets. He knew the residents. He knew which houses belonged to elderly couples and which belonged to families with small children. That's why, one Friday night, he immediately noticed something that shouldn't have been there. A house at the end of Willow Lane. Michael had driven that road hundreds of times. There had always been trees at the end. But now there was a house. 2 stories, white siding, black shutters, a single porch light glowing above the front door. Michael slowed his car. He looked at the address. 116. He frowned. There was no house 116. Willow Lane ended at 114. After that was a wooded area. Michael drove past it. The house remained. He turned around, drove past again. Still there. He pulled over. Something about the place made him uncomfortable. Not because it looked abandoned. It looked occupied. There were curtains in the windows, a flower pot beside the front door, a child's bicycle leaning against the garage, and someone was standing upstairs. Michael couldn't see the person's face, just a silhouette. He drove home. The next morning, he checked the neighborhood map. No house 116. He checked the county property website. Nothing. He called the HOA. The woman on the phone said, "There's no property at that address." Michael laughed. "I know, but I saw a house there." "Where?" "Willow Lane." She paused. "Are you sure?" "Yes." The woman sounded uncomfortable. "Mr. Harris, there has never been a residence at the end of Willow Lane." Michael didn't mention the person in the upstairs window. That evening, he drove there again. The house was gone. Only trees. He got out of the car. There was nothing. No driveway. No tire tracks. No foundation. Nothing. He convinced himself he'd made a mistake. Until Monday night. At 11:47 p.m., his doorbell camera detected movement. Michael opened the app. A man was standing outside his front door. The man looked directly into the camera, then said, "Do you know where 116 is?" Michael's stomach tightened. He opened the door. Nobody was there. The street was empty. The next morning, he checked the recording. The footage had disappeared. Only one frame remained, a blurry image of a man. And behind him, the house, 116 Willow Lane. Michael took the image to the neighborhood watch meeting. Everyone laughed at first. Then he showed them the address. Nobody laughed. An elderly woman named Patricia stared at the photograph. "I know that house." Michael looked at her. "What?" Patricia shook her head. "I shouldn't have said that." "How do you know it?" She looked around the room. "Because my sister lived there." Silence. Michael asked, "When?" Patricia answered, "Before Briar Glen existed." She explained that decades earlier, the land had belonged to a small rural community. There had been several houses scattered through the woods. One of them was numbered 116. A family had lived there, a father, a mother, and 2 children. Then one winter night, the entire family disappeared. No bodies, no evidence. The house was eventually abandoned. Years later, developers purchased the land. The old houses were demolished. Briar Glen was built. Patricia said she had never spoken about it because her sister had been friends with the family. Was the house demolished? Michael asked. "Yes." "You're sure?" Patricia nodded. They tore it down before construction began. Michael looked at the photograph. "Then why does it keep appearing?" Patricia didn't answer. That night, Michael drove to Willow Lane. The house was there again, porch light on. He parked across the street. For almost an hour, nothing happened. Then the upstairs light turned on. A curtain moved. Someone appeared behind the glass. A little boy. He pressed his hand against the window. Michael's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. A child's voice whispered, "Please come inside." Michael hung up. The phone rang again. Please. He turned the car around. As he drove away, he looked into his rearview mirror. The house was still there, but now someone was standing on the porch. A woman. She was holding a small child. Both were staring at him. The next day, Michael returned with 2 other neighborhood watch volunteers. The house was gone. They searched the area. Nothing. One volunteer laughed. Maybe you're seeing things. Michael didn't respond. Then they found something. A rusted metal mailbox hidden in the trees. It was marked 116. Inside was a stack of letters, all addressed to people who currently lived in Briar Glen. Michael took them to the police. The oldest letter was dated 43 years earlier. The newest was dated 3 days before Michael found the mailbox. The newest letter had Michael's name. He opened it. Inside was a single sentence. You saw the house. Underneath. Now it knows you can see it. Michael didn't sleep that night. At 2:16 a.m., someone knocked on his bedroom window. He lived on the 2nd floor. 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Michael slowly approached. He didn't open the curtain. Another 3 knocks. Then a child's voice. Michael. He stepped backward. The voice came again. Michael, let me in. Michael knew the voice. It belonged to his own son, but his son was away at college. Michael called him. His son answered immediately. Hey, Dad. Michael asked. Where are you? At school. Michael looked toward the window. The voice outside said, Dad. His son's voice. Exactly the same. Michael didn't answer. The thing outside whispered, Why won't you let me in? Michael stayed away from the window until sunrise. The next morning, he found muddy footprints beneath the window. They led away from the house. But there was something strange. The footprints were very small, child-sized. Michael called Patricia. She told him something she'd never told anyone before. Her sister's family hadn't simply disappeared. They were watching the house. Michael asked, What do you mean? Patricia explained that before the disappearance, neighbors reported seeing lights in the windows of the abandoned property. People would see a family inside, a man, a woman, 2 children, but the family wasn't actually there. One neighbor eventually approached the house. He knocked. The door opened by itself. He entered. The next morning, he couldn't remember the previous night. 3 weeks later, he disappeared. Patricia's sister had gone looking for him. She never returned. Then what happened to the family? Patricia whispered. They weren't living in the house. Michael frowned. Then what were they? Patricia paused. They were watching. That afternoon, Michael found something in his mailbox. A photograph. It showed Briar Glen. The picture had clearly been taken from the woods. Michael looked at the houses. Then he noticed something. One of the houses in the photograph was wrong. It was 116, and in every upstairs window, people were standing, watching. Michael counted them. 16. Every person in the neighborhood watch group, including him. That night, Michael called an emergency meeting. Only 7 members came. The others couldn't be reached. They decided to drive to Willow Lane together. 5 cars, 10 people. At 11:30 p.m., they arrived. The house wasn't there. They waited. Midnight, 12:30, 1 o'clock, nothing. At 1:13 a.m., the fog began rolling through the trees. Then one of the volunteers shouted, Look, the house appeared. Not gradually. One moment there were trees. The next, there was a house. Everyone froze. The porch light flickered. The front door opened. Nobody touched it. A woman's voice came from inside. Come in. One volunteer stepped forward. Michael grabbed him. Don't. The voice repeated. Come in. Then another voice. A man's. You're safe here. Then a child's. We've been waiting. The group backed away. Suddenly, every window in the house lit up. People appeared behind glass. Dozens of them, all staring at the neighborhood watch volunteers. Then Michael recognized one. His missing neighbor. Another was a man who had disappeared 20 years earlier. Another was Patricia's sister. And then, Michael saw himself, standing in one of the upstairs windows. The version of him inside the house was older. Much older. He was staring down at the group. Michael stepped backward. The older version raised a hand, then pointed toward the woods. Everyone turned. A second house had appeared, then a third, then a fourth. The entire neighborhood was suddenly surrounded by houses that didn't exist. Each one had people standing inside, watching. One volunteer screamed, "Get back in cars!" They ran. Engines started. Headlights illuminated the road. But the road had changed. There were no longer houses around them, only endless streets. They drove for what felt like hours. Every turn brought them back to 116. Finally, Michael stopped. The house stood directly ahead. The front door opened. His missing neighbor walked out. He looked exactly as he had the night he disappeared. He smiled. "Michael." Michael didn't move. The man said, "You've been looking for us." Michael whispered, "Where are we?" The man pointed toward the house. "Home. You're not alive." The man smiled. "Neither are you." Michael looked down. His hands were pale, almost transparent. He screamed. Then everything went black. Michael woke up in his car. Morning sunlight filled the windshield. The neighborhood was normal. His fellow volunteers were asleep in their vehicles. Everyone woke slowly. Nobody remembered how they got there. But one thing had changed. The Neighborhood Watch Group's records showed that 10 people had never existed. Their names were missing. Photos were gone. Homes were empty. Even their families had no memory of them. Michael checked his phone. There was one new photograph. He opened it. It showed the Neighborhood Watch Group standing in front of the community center. Everyone was smiling. But Michael noticed something. He wasn't in the photograph. Neither were the 9 people who had disappeared. Instead, they were standing behind the camera, watching. Michael quit the Neighborhood Watch. He sold his house. He moved away. But years later, he received a package. No return address. Inside was an old photograph of Briar Glen. On the back, 116 Willow Lane. Michael stared at it. The photograph showed the neighborhood at night. Every house was dark, except one, house 116. And standing in the upstairs window was Michael, older, paler, watching the street. A handwritten note was attached. "You can leave Briar Glen, but you can't leave the house." Michael burned the photograph. At least, that's what he claims. Because according to the people who knew him afterward, he became obsessed with keeping the blinds closed. He refused to look outside after sunset. He stopped answering unknown phone numbers. And whenever someone asked why, he always gave the same answer. Some houses don't want to be found. Then, one night, his wife woke at 2:16 a.m. She heard him talking downstairs. She went to investigate. Michael was standing in front of the living room window. The blinds were open. He was staring outside. His wife whispered, "What are you doing?" Michael didn't turn around. He simply said, "There's a house across the street." She looked. There was nothing there. Then Michael smiled and said, "It's finally found us." His wife looked again. This time, there was a house. 2 stories, white siding, black shutters, a single porch light, and a number above the door. 116. The upstairs curtain moved. Someone was standing behind it. Michael's wife screamed, but Michael only whispered, "They've been watching us for years." The next morning, the house was gone. So was Michael. His wife never found him. The police found no evidence of an abduction. No footprints, no broken doors, no security footage. Only one thing remained. A small Neighborhood Watch sticker stuck to the inside of the bedroom window. Beneath it, someone had written, "Look out for your neighbors." And below that, "They're looking out for you." Story 5. The Watcher in the Empty House. This story is presented as an allegedly true account. Names, locations, and identifying details have been changed, and some events may have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. When Sarah moved into Pine Creek Estates, she was told the neighborhood was one of the safest places in the county. That was exactly what she wanted. She was a single mother with a 10-year-old son named Noah, and after years of living in a noisy apartment complex, she wanted somewhere quiet. Pine Creek looked perfect. Wide streets, large yards, mature trees, families walking dogs in the evening, and almost every house had a small sign near the front door. Neighborhood Watch. If you see something, say something. Sarah liked those signs. She thought they meant people cared. She didn't realize that sometimes people notice things they wish they hadn't. The first strange thing happened 3 weeks after Sarah moved in. It was a Wednesday evening. She was cooking dinner when Noah walked into the kitchen. "Mom." "Yeah." "Who's that man?" Sarah looked toward the window. "What man?" "The one in the house." Noah pointed across the street. Sarah looked. There was an empty house directly opposite theirs. It had been vacant for years. The windows were covered with blinds. The lawn was overgrown. Nobody lived there. Sarah looked again. A man's face was visible behind an upstairs window. She froze. The face disappeared. Sarah rushed outside. The house across the street looked exactly as it always did. Dark, empty, locked. She walked toward it. There were no cars, no lights, no footprints. She returned home. Noah was waiting. Who was he? Sarah tried to sound calm. Probably someone working inside. But the house is empty. Maybe someone was checking it. Noah nodded. That night, Sarah closed every curtain. She didn't think about it again until the following night. At exactly 10:18 p.m., she saw the face again. Same window, same man. This time, he was standing farther back. Sarah stared. The man lifted one hand. He waved. Sarah immediately stepped away from the window. She called the neighborhood watch coordinator. A man named Frank answered. "Have you seen someone inside 62? Frank was silent. Sarah noticed. "What? Why are you asking?" "I saw someone in the upstairs window." Frank sighed. "Don't look at that house." Sarah laughed nervously. "What? Just don't. Is someone living there?" "No." "Then who did I see?" Frank didn't answer. Sarah pressed him. "Frank." "Finally," he said. "That house has been empty for 9 years." "Okay." "Nobody goes inside." "Why?" "Because people who do sometimes get hurt." Sarah frowned. "Ow." Frank paused. "They get confused." "Confused? They say the inside is different every time." Sarah thought he was joking. He wasn't. Frank explained that several neighborhood watch volunteers had entered the house over the years because of reports of squatters. Each time, they found nothing. But afterward, they described rooms that didn't exist. One man claimed he'd walked through a hallway for 20 minutes. Another said he'd found a child's bedroom. Another insisted there was a basement. The house didn't have a basement. Sarah asked, "Did anyone disappear?" Frank didn't answer. That was answer enough. Sarah stopped looking toward the house. For several nights, nothing happened. Then Noah disappeared. Only for 3 minutes. But those 3 minutes changed everything. Sarah had been folding laundry upstairs. Noah was playing in the backyard. She heard the back door slam. She went downstairs. Noah. No answer. She checked the backyard. Empty. She ran outside. Noah. Nothing. Her heart raced. She called his phone. It rang. From inside the empty house across the street. Sarah froze. She called the police. Then she ran toward the house. The front door was locked. She could hear Noah's phone ringing inside. She looked through the window. Nothing. Then she heard Noah's voice. "Mom," from upstairs. Sarah screamed. "Noah, I'm here." The police arrived. They broke the door. They searched the house. Noah wasn't there, but his phone was. It was lying on the floor upstairs. The battery was still warm. Sarah collapsed. "Where's my son?" Then an officer heard something. A faint tapping. Tall, tall, tall. It was coming from behind a wall. They searched. Nothing. The tapping continued. Then Noah's voice. "Mom." Sarah pressed her hand against the wall. "Where are you?" "I'm behind the wall." The officer looked at her. There was no room behind it. They broke through. Nothing. Just insulation. The tapping stopped. 3 minutes later, Noah appeared in Sarah's backyard. He was standing beside the swing set, barefoot. His clothes were covered in dust. Sarah ran to him. "Where were you?" Noah began crying. "I don't know. What happened?" "I was in the house." Sarah hugged him. "How did you get out?" Noah looked toward the empty house. "I didn't." Sarah didn't understand. "What?" Noah whispered. "The man let me go." The police searched him. No injuries. No explanation. They asked Noah what the man looked like. Noah said, "He looked like you." Sarah felt sick. The police dismissed it as a child's confusion. But Sarah knew something was wrong. That night, she stayed beside Noah until he fell asleep. At 2:06 a.m., she heard footsteps downstairs. Sarah grabbed her phone. She walked to the staircase. Someone was standing in the living room. A tall figure. Sarah turned on the light. Nobody. She checked the doors. Locked. Then she noticed the front window. The blinds were open. She always kept them closed. On the glass was a handprint. From the inside, Sarah stepped backward. Her phone buzzed. A notification from the neighborhood watch group. Motion detected at 62. Sarah opened the attached camera feed. The empty house appeared on screen. A figure walked across the upstairs hallway, then stopped. It turned toward the camera. Sarah recognized the face. It was hers. She dropped the phone. The next morning, she called Frank. He came over. Sarah showed him the recording. Frank watched silently, then asked, "Did you open your blinds?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Yes." Frank looked at Noah. "Has he been seeing anything?" Noah nodded. Frank closed his eyes. Then it started again. Sarah asked, "What started?" Frank sat down. "The house." He explained that every few years, the house seemed to become active. Someone would see a figure. Children would report hearing voices. People would receive phone calls from inside. Then someone would enter. After that, the neighborhood would change. Sarah asked, "What do you mean?" Frank looked toward the empty house. "People start disappearing." Sarah stared. "How many?" "7 that I know of." "7? Probably more. Why hasn't anyone done anything?" Frank laughed bitterly. "People have." He told her that the county had tried to demolish the house. The first demolition crew arrived 9 years ago. They couldn't find the property. The address existed. The lot existed. But when they arrived, there was nothing there. The next day, the house returned. They tried again. Same thing. Eventually, everyone stopped. Sarah asked, "Why?" Frank said, "Because every person who tries to destroy it ends up seeing someone they lost." Sarah felt cold. That night, Sarah packed a bag. She was leaving. Noah was already in the car. She started the engine. Then the headlights illuminated the house. The upstairs window was glowing. A figure stood behind it. Sarah looked away. The figure moved. It was now standing downstairs. Then the front door opened. Sarah locked the doors. Noah whispered, "Mom, what?" "The man is outside." Sarah looked in the rearview mirror. Someone was standing behind the car. She pressed the accelerator. The car wouldn't move. The figure approached the driver's window. Sarah screamed. Then it disappeared. The car suddenly started. Sarah drove out of the neighborhood. They stayed in a motel that night. At 3 a.m., someone knocked on their motel door. Sarah froze. Noah was asleep. The knocking came again. Knock, knock, knock. Sarah looked through the peephole. Nobody. She stepped away. A man's voice whispered, "Sarah." She didn't answer. The voice continued, "You left your blinds open." Sarah covered her mouth. Then Noah woke. "Mom." The voice outside became Noah's. "Mom, open the door." Sarah looked at her son. He was standing beside her. The thing outside repeated, "Mom." Sarah didn't answer. After 10 minutes, the knocking stopped. At sunrise, she opened the door. The hallway was empty, but on the carpet was a neighborhood watch flyer. It wasn't from the motel. It was from Pine Creek Estates. At the bottom was written, "You can leave the neighborhood. You can't leave the house." Sarah took Noah and drove to her sister's home. For several months, nothing happened. Sarah believed it was over. Then Noah began drawing again. He drew the empty house. He drew the upstairs window. He drew a man standing behind it. Sarah asked, "Who is that?" Noah answered, "The Watcher." "Who is the Watcher?" Noah looked at her. "You." Sarah felt sick. "No, you were in the house." "I wasn't." Noah shook his head. "You were." Sarah stared at the drawing. There were 2 figures, a woman, a child, and a man behind them. The man looked like Sarah. She threw the drawing away. That night, she woke at 2:06 a.m. Her bedroom window was open. She knew she'd locked it. Across the street from her sister's house was another house. Gray, 2 stories, dark windows. Sarah stared. She recognized it. House 62. She closed the curtains. Then someone whispered from behind her, "You shouldn't have left." Sarah turned. Nobody. Noah was still asleep. She woke him. They left the house before sunrise. Sarah finally understood. The house didn't belong to Pine Creek. It followed people. It appeared wherever someone who had seen it tried to escape. She moved again. Different town. Different state. She stopped talking about it. Years passed. Noah grew older. Sarah thought they were safe. Then one evening, Noah called her. "Mom, what's wrong?" "There's a house across the street." Sarah stopped breathing. "What does it look like?" "Gray." Her hands began shaking. "Does it have black shutters?" "Yes." "What's the number?" Silence. Then Noah whispered, 62. Sarah closed her eyes. "Don't look at the windows." "Why?" "Just don't." "Mom." Listen to me. There's someone inside. Sarah whispered. Close the curtains. It's waving at me. Don't wave back. Noah's voice became frightened. Mom, what? It looks like you. Sarah felt tears forming. Get away from the window. Then Noah whispered. Mom, what? The person inside is waving at you too. Sarah slowly looked toward her own living room window. The curtains were closed, but behind them, a shadow was standing. Tall, motionless. Sarah didn't move. Her phone was still connected. Noah whispered, Mom. Sarah couldn't answer. The shadow raised its hand. 3 fingers pressed against the curtain. Then a voice came from inside the room. Her own voice. Don't worry, the shadow whispered. I'm watching the neighborhood. Sarah dropped the phone. She ran outside. Neighbors began coming out of their houses. She screamed for help. People gathered around her. Then someone pointed across the street. There was no house, only trees. Sarah stared. The house had disappeared. Again, but one thing remained. A small sign. It was nailed to a tree. Neighborhood watch. Beneath it, someone had written, We see you. Sarah never saw the house again, but she claims that every few months, someone in her neighborhood reports seeing a strange house where no house should be. Always gray, always 2 stories, always dark windows, and always one person standing upstairs, watching. Sometimes it's a man, sometimes a woman, sometimes a child, but according to Sarah, the face changes depending on who is looking. Because the house doesn't show you a stranger. It shows you someone you recognize, someone you trust, someone you love, or sometimes it shows you yourself. So if you ever notice an unfamiliar house in your neighborhood, especially one that seems to have appeared overnight, don't approach it, don't knock, don't enter, and whatever you do, don't stare too long at the upstairs window, because if someone inside notices you, they might wave, and if you wave back, you may have just told them exactly where you live.